Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Method Test Prep's Time Live on Facebook. We're presenting here every weekday around 11 a.m. We're sharing with you some really key strategies for the SAT and the ACT on all sections of the test, math, reading, English, trying to focus on some really key ideas that can provide helpful insights on the exams. I really just want to share with you how to decode and decipher these tests, because sometimes it's really about understanding how these tests work and how the information is presented. And sometimes that's half the battle in getting these questions correctly and just navigating the test with efficiency and effectiveness. We've talked about some English and math and reading. I thought I would switch up again and talk about reading today. I wanted to focus on a few questions that really highlight the patterns in the SAT reading and the type of way to approach these passages. You can chat in if there's some questions. I may ask you a question or two. You can chat in and answer. And at the end, I'll stick around for a minute or so. I'm also going to put on some information about where you can get more info from our website and more info on some of the services we offer. Okay, first I wanted to talk a little bit about the reading section of the SAT specifically. It's quite similar to the ACT in many ways, but there are some differences. Today we're going to focus primarily on SAT reading, although a lot of these skills and these insights and strategies can be applicable to both. One of the first things I usually like to discuss with students when talking about the SAT or the ACT reading section is that it's quite a different approach we want to take here from the reading we may do in school. Although some of the reading passages you'll see might be familiar or similar to things you're doing in school. One of the main differences I want to highlight, which will lead us into some of these strategies, is the idea that in school, we tend to want to read assignments very thoroughly. We want to maybe read it more than once. We're going to spend a lot of time with our, a book we're assigned or an article or, a paper we have to read. We're going to want to understand it very well. We're probably going to discuss it in class. We may even do a presentation on it in class, then write an essay on it, then do again, on the final, you have to remember a lot and perform well on the final exam. So the bottom line with school reading is you have to do a lot of deep analysis and sit with the passage or the book for a long time and really understand it inside and out, because you're not going to have the book with you on the test. On the day of the test, you're going to have to remember and recall a lot from that book. What's going to be quite different here on the SAT is that you do need to do some analysis. You are going to have to read the passages pretty well and to understand what's going on in a general sense. But the big difference is that the passages are right in front of you. So while you do the questions on the SAT or ACT, you have the passage directly next to you. And so you want to get into the habit of referencing that passage. And you'll find on the SAT and ACT that it's really much more about finding what you need rather than analyzing. So we're going to practice today using the time to find what the key ideas, the key words are that will lead us to the answer. Now, a couple of thoughts just to start off before we look at the questions. Every passage on the SAT and ACT will start off with a short introduction, which I've called here a blurb. It's usually just like a sentence or two telling you the name of the article, the title of the article, the name of the author, and maybe the year it was written. Occasionally, they give you some additional information that can be really helpful. This seems to be an easy thing that students want to skip. I don't have to read the intro. I can just get to the passage. It may not contain, the most important information, but you'd be surprised how often questions come up that relate to the introduction, and it can be helpful to at least read it once. Another reason is one of the first things we want to do on every reading passage is to spend at least a minute or so, maybe longer, finding a bit about the main idea or the primary purpose of the passage. We want to head into those questions with at least having a little bit of an idea of what this passage is about. It will help us navigate the questions much more easily, even if we have a simple idea of what the main idea is. Basically, what was the single point that the author really wanted to make? If you could summarize the article in about a sentence or so. Now, as you look through the passage, you may find a sentence that kind of summarizes it perfectly, and you want to focus on those, highlight those, underline those. But sometimes the blurb itself, the intro at the beginning, gives you the title, and the title can give you a lot of insight as well. As you go through the questions, as we're going to see in a moment, we want to focus a lot on keywords. So we're going to use that main idea as the starting point, but then in each question, we really want to focus on the keywords and the key ideas in each question, because that will help guide us to the answers. We're going to quickly look at a sample passage from a recent SAT to look at the type of questions that we're going to come across on the SAT reading and how this idea of finding evidence really is key to every question. First, I just want to point out here very quickly that in this passage, if I go to the top and read the intro, I find out it's written by Francis J. Flynn and Gabrielle S. Adams in 2008. But really what I want to focus on here is this title, Money Can't Buy Love, Asymmetric Beliefs About Gift Price and Feelings of Appreciation. Now, right away, this has something to do with money, but that money can't buy love, so something to do with love or affection or admiration. And it says asymmetric beliefs. Now, this might be a challenging word, but if you remember from math, symmetry means it's the same on both sides, right? You have the same picture on both sides of a line. Asymmetric must mean the opposite, because A usually, as a prefix, will connote or signify that it's the opposite of what follows. So if symmetry is what follows, asymmetry means not even or not similar on both sides, right? One's big, one's small. So something about different, I would say, different beliefs, not similar or not the same. So different beliefs about the price of gifts and feelings of appreciation. So we've already picked up on a lot of themes and main ideas here in this passage, something about giving gifts, buying gifts, the price of the gift, and feelings of appreciation. Now, I'll find out more as I read the passage, but this is a great starting point. I now at least have a fairly good idea of what I'm going to be reading about. Now, you can find some info from that intro and maybe the title, but again, even if you just read a couple of paragraphs, maybe the first 3 or 4 paragraphs, even if you don't get a chance to read the whole passage to start, you're going to go back a lot and read a lot of this passage as you do the questions. But just to start, even if you only read a couple paragraphs, still you can find a main idea. So stay focused on that as part of your initial reading of the passage. Okay, now no matter how much you read this passage, the only points are with the questions. So you do want to spend the majority of your time working on the questions. You can always come back to the passage to reread or double check things that you need for the questions. Let's take a quick look at the first example, the first question on this passage, which provides a great example of how evidence can be very key. Question 11 starts off by asking, the authors most likely used the examples in lines 1 through 9 of the passage. They give you the quotes from Every to Showers to highlight the. Now, you can go ahead and read the answer choices if you'd like. Sometimes I tend to want to see if I can find an answer or even the start of an answer before I read the choices, just to see if I can find the evidence I need and then maybe have an easier time comparing it to the choices. But either one works. In this case, however, I have a real bonus. They've actually given me the exact lines I need to focus on, line 1 through 9. And they've given me the exact words I can start and end at, right? Every to showers. So somehow what I'm looking for should be somewhere in between here. or that's at least where I want to focus. Now, they're really asking, why do the authors use the examples in line 1 through 9 to highlight something? Well, if I go back to lines 1 through 9 in the passage, you'll see here, it talks about every day millions of shoppers hit the stores in full force, both online and on foot, searching frantically for the perfect gift. Last year, Americans spent over $30 billion at retail stores in the month of December alone. Aside from purchasing holiday gifts, most people regularly buy presents for other occasions throughout the year, including weddings, birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, and baby showers. So I have a little idea here about, as a country, we spend a lot of money, $30 billion alone in December in this year in the United States. It's a lot of money we're spending on gifts. And it sort of lists out times when you buy a gift. Let's go down and look at this question and the answer choices. Choice A, are they trying here to highlight the regularity with which people shop for gifts? Well, they are mentioning a lot of times when people buy gifts, so that seems to be at least a potential candidate. Let's look at choice B, the recent increase in the amount of money spent on gifts. Well, I do see an amount of money with 30 billion, but it never says that this is an increase or a decrease. Even if you find one error in the answer, that's enough to get rid of that one. B's gone. Choice C, is it to highlight the anxiety gift shopping causes for consumers? Well, I don't see anything in lines 1 through 9 about anxiety. So that's enough to cancel out choice C. Let's look at choice D, the number of special occasions involving gift giving. Well, they did mention a bunch of occasions. So again, looking at keywords, special occasions, they do mention that. That looks like a pretty good possibility as well. So now I'm down to two choices, A and D. Now I have to look at these a little more closely. And I will say many students get tripped up on this question because A and D are very close answers. In fact, you might have a challenging time even deciphering what's really the difference in meaning between A and D. Regularity with which we shop for gifts, the number of special occasions, also a lot of times to shop for gifts. Here's going to be the key to help finding this answer. I see occasions here, true enough, but the main idea of this sentence is that most people regularly buy presents, whether it's for a special occasion or not. So I gotta be careful here. It might not be a special occasion. It could just be an occasion. Hey, I'm buying you a gift because you did something nice for me. So there could be in many occasions, but really the key here is the word regularly. That matches most closely with regularity. And that's the idea that in choice A reflects the main point in this sentence. So the correct answer for number 11 is choice A. So even when you get down to two close choices, what you want to do is get really good at keying in on keywords and clues that can point you to the right answer. They will often drop little hints in the passage just like this to help you match with the correct answer. Let's quickly look at another example in the passage. And here we have a specific type of question that is really common on the SAT, so you should be very familiar with it. If you practice for the SAT, you want to get very familiar with what are called word and context questions. Now, in these questions, they tend to ask us about the meaning of a word as it's used in a specific line in the passage. Now, you might think of these as vocabulary questions, but let me already warn you. They've usually given you four choices that mean somewhat similar ideas to the word that they're asking about. So it may not be enough to simply know what the word means. And you don't want to fall for, hey, I usually see that word means choice B, so I'm going to go with B or C or D. You actually are being asked something very specific here. You're being asked how this word is used specifically in this line, in this passage. So what I really want to focus on is the context. I want to understand what's going on when they're discussing this word. I usually recommend to students a very specific method for doing these. First, this might be tough to do, but I tend to tell students, cover the answers on word and context questions because the answers may confuse you a bit. So I tend to cover up the words to start because I don't want to distract myself. All of these words might sound like good answers at first. So I'm going to cover up the answers, and I'm going to go back to the passage because I have a line and I have the actual word, so I know exactly where to look. And they're focusing here on this sentence, line 10, and the word I'm focusing on is ambivalent. Now, what I'm going to want to do is go to the sentence, find the word, and I'm going to challenge myself and try to come up with a replacement word for what they're given. Instead of ambivalent, I want to come up with a replacement word, a different word. Now, the important clue is this. In these questions, they've often left hints in the context just surrounding the word. So not just in the sentence that you're looking at, but also a little bit above or maybe a little bit below. Check what's going on just outside of this word, and often you can find some critical clues. So it says this frequent experience of giving gifts or gift giving can engender ambivalent feelings in gift givers. So can create blank feelings or make blank feelings. What kind of feelings? Well, if I continue to read the next sentence, many relish the opportunity to buy presents. So they really like buying presents. That seems to be a positive feeling. But at the next sentence, I find at the same time, many dread the thought of buying gifts. That seems to be somewhat of a negative feeling. So at first, I wasn't sure what kind of feelings, but now I can see it's a little bit of both. Sometimes some positive feelings, sometimes some negative feelings. So maybe a word like mixed feelings. I've come up with my own replacement word or maybe just an idea, and now I can go back to the answer choices. Now I'm going to try and match it as closely to the word I have. Is mixed unrealistic? No. Conflicted? Mixed. Conflicted? Maybe. Apprehensive? I don't think that reflects what I'm going for. And supportive? No, that seems way off base. I'm left really with conflicted. And conflicted usually means some of this, some of that, or you're in between two decisions. You're a little conflicted how you feel. Not sure if I'm all positive or all negative. Mixed. This is a great method for doing words in context. These questions come up probably at least one or two on every passage. So getting used to them, getting familiar with them, and employing this method can be incredibly helpful. Let's look at one more quick question on this passage, just to reinforce this idea of how key evidence can be. Now, what many of you may have found on the SAT are what are called paired evidence questions. Now, as I just said, on almost every question, most questions on the reading section, we want to be going back and finding evidence anyway. It should be part of our practice. It should be sort of the method we use throughout the reading section. So almost every question is really going to require us to go back and find evidence and double check our answers to make sure we're backing up whatever answer we have with some evidence. However, the SAT has now made this more explicit or required. As you see here, question 13 asks a basic question about the passage, and then question 14 immediately after asks, which choice below provides the best evidence for the previous question, for the answer to the previous question? So what you're asked here is to not only get the answer right on 13, but to find evidence to back it up on 14. Now, many students who just guess on 13 or don't know the answer feel pretty frustrated that 14 is now asking them once again about this concept, and they may get both wrong. Here's some advice. Turn this on its head and think about this exactly opposite. What you're given here are two questions that essentially relate to the same idea and really deal with the same concept or evidence in the passage. So you can get two for the price of one. If you can work on these together and do them at the same time together, you're going to be in much better position to get them correct. So one really helpful technique that I tend to employ here is I will look at 13 first and give it a try, or at least maybe understand it a little bit, and I might be able to eliminate a choice or two. The authors indicate that people value gift giving because they feel it. Now, I can read through the choices or maybe go back into the passage and find where they talk about gift giving or what people value with giving or what they feel. Those are all key phrases or key words I can look up. But even before I answer 13, since I know I'm going to, in a moment, have to find the evidence, as I search through the quotes in 14, it's going to be really helpful if I know what I'm looking for. Here's a technique I love to use on these questions. I'll go to each choice and I'll underline the key words or the key ideas in each choice. So let's assume A is the right answer for 13. That means somewhere in the evidence for 14, I'm going to find something in those quotes about self-expression, a form of self-expression. Similar in B, if B is the right answer, I want to be looking for something about inexpensive and showing appreciation. If choice C is correct, then I want to be looking for something about the gift recipient reciprocates, which means they give back. And D, I want to look for something about strengthening a relationship. So now, having outlined question 13 and know exactly the types of words and ideas I need to look for, let's go to 14. Which choice provides the best evidence? Well, good news here. Usually I'd have to look for evidence across the whole passage, but bonus, on these evidence ones, they give you the actual lines to look for. So you can go directly to those. Let's start with choice A, 10 to 13. So now I'm focused on these lines from 10 to about 13 here. Specifically the words many to peers. Okay. Many relish the opportunity to buy gifts. Why? Because gift giving offers a powerful means to build stronger bonds with one's closest peers. Anything from 13 that matches with? Well, I see stronger. I see strength here. And they don't use the word relationship, but they use bonding with peers. Bonding means to hang out, spend time, connect with friends or peers. That sounds a lot like a relationship. Okay, so strengthen and stronger, almost identical words. Bonds and relationship, these would be more like synonyms. SAT loves to put synonyms in there. Right? Just because the exact word isn't there, if it means about the same, you're pretty close. So it looks like the best evidence, A, matches with choice D in 13. Now, I would also spend time to go through each of these quotes as well for B, C, and D, just to make sure none were better. And be careful because they like to plant false leads. So in some of these quotes, they might have mentioned something about self-expression, but it actually wasn't quite right. It didn't line up with the answer you were looking for. But they may try and fool you with hints of other wrong answers. But really the closest relationship here was between choice A and 14 and choice D in 13. So this can be a great method for doing paired evidence questions. And once again, look what I did. I used key words in each answer choice and in the question to go find the answers. So again, just as a reminder, the SAT and ACT reading are primarily about finding evidence. Don't just think you remember or think you know or think it sounds good. You always want to go back and check. And you have the passage right in front of you. Just flip the page and use all the evidence you can. Read the blurb at the top. Read a couple paragraphs at least, or the whole passage. Try and get a main idea. It'll help guide you through the answers. And then when you get to the questions, use keywords, and sometimes, if you need to, find synonyms to find evidence for your answers. All right. I hope that was helpful in outlining a couple of key strategies for the SAT reading. Reading can be a challenging section. Sometimes it does depend on your reading abilities and how much time and comfort you have reading or spending time with these passages. But I want to encourage you that even in a more difficult or dense passage or something that you don't understand right away, you can still use keywords and evidence to find key ideas in the passage, even just using little details along the way. I just wanted to mention a few key things. Some of these strategies we talked about today are available in our web program in specifically our study guides. We have a study guide for each section of both the SAT and ACT. You can download these from resource materials within our program. We are offering a special discount for our online self-paced web program. This is a self-directed course that you can do on your own, 15, 20-minute tasks, lessons, videos, full-length tests, and study guides that I just pointed out. Usually this is $199 for a subscription for high school students. It's 50% off. Just use the code FUTURE when you check out on our website, and you can find out more about the program at that URL at the bottom. We are also offering an extension of these Facebook Live classes online today and tomorrow at 1 p.m. We're calling these Test Prep Time Plus. It's a short class, about 30 minutes, only $10. And you can look at focus strategies and ideas for the SAT and ACT and just general academic help. We have a class today at 1 o'clock to 1:30 on sentence placement for writing and language, or English. We have another one tomorrow, April 3rd at 1 o'clock, and this will be focused on reading and annotating passages. You can find out more at the URL at our website, /class/online/test prep time plus. We also are holding full-length SAT and ACT classes, 16, 18-hour classes online. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to talk with students, parents, just advise, consult on test prep and how to plan ahead. Well, thanks for joining us this morning. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to answer any questions you might have and help guide you during this time and also during your prep for the upcoming exams.